The story begins in a dimly lit tent, where shadows seem to dance on the walls. Abram sat in silence, staring at the open sky above his tent. Years had passed since God made a promise of descendants as countless as the stars. Genesis 15:5. Yet, his wife, Sarai, was barren. There was no son, no heir. The promise felt like a whisper fading into silence. Sarai, too, felt the weight of waiting. Her once joyful spirit had turned into deep sorrow. She was a woman of faith, but doubt began to creep into her mind. Was she the reason Abram's promise remained unfulfilled? One day, Sarai made a decision that would change everything. "Abram," she said, her voice trembling yet firm, "the Lord has kept me from bearing children. Go, sleep with my maidservant. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Genesis 16:2. Abram agreed. He took Hagar, Sarai's Egyptian servant, as his wife. When Hagar conceived, everything changed. Suddenly, Hagar, the once humble servant, looked at Sarai with contempt. She was no longer just a servant. She carried Abram's child. Her pride grew, and her attitude wounded Sarai's already fragile heart. Sarai's pain turned into anger. She went to Abram. "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me." Genesis 16:5. Abram, caught between his wife and the mother of his child, said, "Your slave is in your hands. Do with her whatever you think best." Sarai's response was harsh. She mistreated Hagar so severely that Hagar could bear it no longer. In desperation, Hagar fled into the wilderness. Hagar collapsed near a spring in the wilderness, her strength drained, her hope fading. It was here, at the spring along the road to Shur, that a voice pierced the silence. "Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going?" Genesis 16:8. Startled, Hagar looked up. Before her stood an angel of the Lord, a figure radiant and compassionate. "I am running away from my mistress Sarai," she confessed. The angel's response was unexpected. "Go back to your mistress and submit to her." Hagar's heart sank. Go back? To the very place of her suffering? But then came a promise that changed everything. "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count." Genesis 16:10. The angel continued, "You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery." In that wilderness moment, Hagar realized something profound. She was not forgotten. The God who seemed distant had seen her pain. Overwhelmed, she gave God a name, El Roi, the God who sees me. "I have now seen the one who sees me," she whispered. Genesis 16:13. Strengthened by the encounter, Hagar returned to Sarai, carrying not just Abram's child, but also God's promise. In time, Hagar gave birth to a son, and Abram named him Ishmael, which means God hears. Abram was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. Genesis 16:16. The story of Genesis 16 is not just about human mistakes and conflicts. It is about a God who sees, hears, and cares even when life feels hopeless. The story of Hagar is one of brokenness and redemption. Even in the wilderness, when we feel unseen and unheard, there is a God who sees us, who knows our pain, and who meets us in our darkest moments. As the Bible tells us, "You are the God who sees me," for she said, "I have now seen the one who sees me." Genesis 16:13. This chapter in Genesis reminds us that no one is forgotten, no cry goes unheard, and no wilderness is too far for God to reach.